Now, in the last video, we talked about how changes in the genetic code through duplication events, transposition, exon shuffling, modifications of duplicated copies, and even entire new genes can evolve from mutations, leading to evolution at the genetic level. Now, what also can happen is that it could be changes that don't necessarily affect the code itself, but how the code is managed or expressed. Now, when we did a genetics lecture series, we talked about the fact that protein synthesis is the process by which a protein is made from the blueprint of the DNA codes, the whole central dogma of biology, how the DNA gets transcribed into RNA and then translated into proteins. Now, if anything at all, during that whole machinery of this process changes, it is going to change the end product as well. So another way to change to evolve the organism without necessarily changing the original message is to change how you treat the message. Think of it this way. If you change the messengers, the machines that work on that message, all right, then you're going to change the message or the way the message is interpreted. So sometimes you're going to change the code without changing the actual code, but changing the pieces that interpret the code. Now, of course, it's DNA that codes for that as well. But what I'm saying, it may be the gene that makes that protein did not change at all. It was the genes that changed how you process that protein that changed, and that's why the protein changed. So I just wanted to bring up the idea that changes in gene expression could also change to changes in the way that protein is made. Likewise, gene expression is not even going to happen unless the cell knows that it needs that gene. So remember, we talked about cell communication earlier in the year, or if you're watching this before cell communication, is the idea that signals from the outside are going to activate the expression of genes. So cells respond to environmental stimuli. But if the way the cells respond to stimuli depends on the mechanisms for that communication, if you change any of the mechanisms of the communication, it's going to change the way the cells respond. So what I'm trying to say here, maybe you didn't change the gene for the protein at all, but if you change the way that the cell responds to the environment, or the mechanisms in which the cell uses to respond to the environment, and if you change the way the cells communicate from the outside to the inside, if you change the way the cells activate gene expression, if you change the mechanisms of gene expression, all of that could lead to a different protein, even if you have the same original genetic message that you had in the beginning. And that is evolution. Humans have a lot of the genes that are the same genes that monkeys have. But because we respond to the environment differently, because of gene communication, because our cell communication, and because our gene expression mechanisms are different, because our development is different, all of these things will lead us to be different from them, even if our gene is identical to them. Because the way we treat the gene, and the way we either activate it or not, the way we decide where to activate or not, the way we respond to the environment, the way we communicate from cell to cell, the way the cells communicate with itself, if any of those things changes, and definitely those things did change, that leads to a different protein, even if you had a different gene, or no protein at all. Sometimes the protein won't be made, and that in itself is evolution. So you might even have the gene, but because you treat it differently, or you don't treat it at all, you're going to have evolution happening because the gene is treated differently. Now, in the next video, I'm going to talk about how changes in developmental genes can also change the way the genes are treated, and therefore cause evolution or changes in the actual organism. I'll see you then.